Powerful speaker. So I'm going to share with you what I've been working on lately. And it's going to be probably a little bit different. Changing part of what I wrote because she hits all those good points. She talks about the explanatory memorandum, and I just want to point out how important one of her points was with that. She talked about the importance of the local police. Well, it is the local police that got us that explanatory memorandum. How? In 2003, an officer saw a woman get out of a car and start to take pictures of the Chesapeake Bay Bridge support structure. Well, she was in a full burqa. He's thinking, oh, that's not so good a thing to, So what does he do? As a good officer, he does a normal traffic stop, and of course the woman was not driving. Well, that might be forbidden. So he pulls her over, pulls the husband over, and gets his ID, looks at it. Ismail Brace is the man behind the car. So the FBI had a warrant out for him for questioning. Interesting part about that is this little bit of his wife's doing this nice little camera study allowed the FBI and Project Green Quest to do a nice little warrant on his house. They found 93 bankers' boxes in a hidden sub-basement in his house, and that is where we get the explanatory memorandum. This was used in the 2007 and the 2008 trials of the Holy Land Foundation trial. And it is mind-blowing how much importance that document has for us. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Civilization Jihad, and then I'm going to tell you about the Hijra. A lot of people have not heard about the Hijra, so I want to get a chance to talk about that. So I'm going to kind of rush through things. I want to talk about in 1991, we had no clue what was happening. That's the year that the explanatory memorandum was written. In 1991, George Herbert Walker Bush was president. So why is Civilization Jihad important to understand? Simply put, the war is being waged in North America on 4 different levels. Colleges. This is where they started. They came in. In fact, the first thing they did here is they said, stage 1 is done. What did it mean? They were there. This is 1962-63. They said, we're done. We're here for stage 1's done. They actually did that. They actually have a recorded meeting. Did you hear that recorded? The FBI was listening. Okay, the next thing. I call this phase 2, the colleges. Now think about where your children go to college today and the classes who they're taking, the professors from who the professors are. So your child someday needs a security clearance. One of his professors worked for the Muslim Brotherhood. Guess who's not getting the security clearance? Your child. They are not going to be working for that nice government posting. Why? Because you were affiliated with a man who later became called a terrorist. That's going to happen throughout this United States, and it's already beginning to happen. Does anybody know when they're going to need a security clearance? I have 2 friends that I know of that did not know they would need one later in life. One was a housemate. I came home one day, my housemate walks in, I have to leave. It's like, what? He says, just got hired by the CIA, I'm leaving right now. They'll send someone to ask questions about me later. So he packed up all his bags and ran. He was a student, PhD student at the U of R. And all of a sudden, he's gone. U of R, University of Rochester. Okay, he didn't know he was going to need that clearance. He was 27. I have another friend. Simply put, he wanted to make his stand and not register for the draft. One of his jobs was working for the federal government. They said, hey, notice you did not fill this paperwork out. Oh, okay, I filled it out. Didn't know he would need that clearance. We have to be careful. Now, what does this mean? That's first step into the colleges. It means that this was a place that they could go into so they could change how you think. They could change what you do by simply playing with things like textbooks. So let me tell you about the textbook in my school district. I found 25 errors just in these 12, it's probably closer to 15 to 18 pages. I'm just talking about 18 pages in a textbook on Islam. Out of these, there were 2 problems of prejudice. Why are they problems of prejudice? They simply refer to Muhammad as the prophet. Now, I don't know about you, but as a Christian, I have a problem with my child reading a book that claims that Muhammad is simply the prophet. And as a textbook, which is supposed to be teaching factual information. Another problem with this textbook, and you'll find it in almost every textbook in America. It shows a picture of the Dome of the Rock. This mosque, it says, is where Muhammad ascended into heaven. Problem. The historical truth about this is much scarier. The historical truth that's not being told to your children is this. If you read Ibn Ishaq's history of Muhammad, you'll find out that Muhammad had a nice day. He went to sleep. He had this incredible dream while he was sleeping with his wife, where he got on a flying donkey, flying ass, named Barak. He flew all the way to Jerusalem from Mecca or Medina. I have to go double check the place on that. He flew, I believe from Mecca, all the way to Jerusalem. Now, there's questions on whether this dream took 2 days, because maybe, I guess, Mecca's so far away from Jerusalem. So he had to sleep for 2 days, I guess, maybe, I don't know. But he then gets off and he sees the synagogue, the Solomon's temple. Problem, historical problem. There was a church there. So we have historical problems with something presented in a textbook as fact. This is dangerous. And this is only one thing I'm mentioning. Again, I found several. If you want your child's textbook looked at, I have no problem with you contacting me. My information, look me up. My website is paulsutliff.blogspot.com, where you can catch me on the Civilization Jihad Awareness Show on Blog Talk Radio and American Patriot Radio. So let me talk about where else we're going here. The third place that Civilization Jihad takes place, society. Now, think about different elements of our society. What makes us unique? Americans are known the world over for their pride in fairness, their beliefs in rights for all Americans, and their generosity. So what happens when charities begin to promote jihad? How many people are willing to give to something unless they check it out now? It's one thing to be worried about a scam artist. It's another thing to be worried about your money going to support the killing of other people. And that's what's happening today. How about this one? You ever heard of Sharia swims? The editor of my book, in the first copy of my book when I put it out, is from Seattle. And when I sent it to her, I purposely hired her because she's liberal. I wanted her to go over my book with a fine-tooth comb and make as many complaints as she could, which would make me write a better book. She gets this section and says, wait a minute, what's going on here? This is my neighborhood. This actually happened here. So they sent all the men home that worked at this swim place, this pool, sent all the men home. No men allowed to work because they're going to have a Sharia swims. This is basically a women's swim only. They covered the windows with paper so no perverted men could actually look. So they do this. Guess what? It doesn't last very long. Why? Because the truth is, not that many women who are Muslim actually wanted to swim. They just wanted the ability to control and say, you have to do this. In America, if you don't get something going and it doesn't last, popularly it just doesn't last. Number 4. Oh, one more thing here. Take a walk in St. Cloud. I did that. Civilization takes place in a whole new meaning when you walk past the Mogadishu grocery, which for some reason can have like 50 cars on after Friday prayers. Let's not forget all those halal compliance signs that tell the local Muslims, yes, you can do business here. Let's talk about that 4th place, government. When you look at the amount of money our federal government has been giving to things and causes that are Islamic, it boggles the mind. For example, take the federal funding of crossing cultural spaces, Islam in the West in arts and sciences, as a project promoted by U.S. government in museums, libraries, public universities such as the University of Minnesota Twin Cities. Look at who was working in the White House shortly after getting on what we call the board of directors, they use the term Shura Council, for the Islamic Society of North America, Asma Mirza. She's the daughter of Jacob Mirza, the former president of the Islamic Society of North America. Now let's think about this. Can you get a security clearance if you work for an organization that promotes things like Sharia? That says things like, it's just so mind-boggling that somebody who works for this organization can get a security clearance. Now, where did she work? She was in the Office of Management and Budget, OMB. President Obama often referred to her. When you think about, when we have questions about your budget, go talk to her. Yet she's not the only one that had an interesting history parentage. Take a look at Zaki Barzinji. Zaki Barzinji got to work in the White House, and his father was Jamal Barzinji. Jamal Barzinji was, according to David, according to the Muslim Mafia, the book by Muslim Mafia, the head of the Muslim Mafia, the Masul of the Muslim Mafia, or we call it Muslim Mafia is another terminology for the Muslim Brotherhood here in North America. How did that child get to work in the White House? Somebody please explain it to me. And then it gets better. How come their salaries were missing? Now those are important questions. Let's go on. I want to talk about what's the big fight today. What are we fighting for today? Remember Trump's executive order? It stopped the Obama's influx of Sunni Muslims through the refugee program. So let's take a look at what a refugee is, according to the law. This is from the 1980 Refugee Act. It says simply, any person who is outside any country of any such person's nationality, or in the case of a person having no nationality, is outside any country in which each person last habitually resided, and who is unable or unwilling to return to, or is unable or willing to avail himself or herself or the protection of that country because of persecution or a well-founded fear of persecution on account of race, religion, nationality, membership in a particular social group, or political opinion. The 1980 definition of refugee is simply this: A, any person who's outside of their home country, and B, who is unable or unwilling to return, and C, because of a persecution or a well-founded fear of persecution. So can Sunni Muslims be refugees from a place like Syria, a primarily Sunni country? So who was persecuted? Religions other than Muslims, mostly Christians and Jews. Shiite Muslims, homosexuals, journalists, females. Yes, if you were a female Muslim, you are at risk if you were in Syria. Here's why. When they took over Mosul in Iraq, they put out this nice little poster. It said simply this: bring your women out for sex jihad. So we'll count the women who are Sunni Muslim in this one. So if a person comes to a country as a refugee and has learned that they never were in danger of being persecuted, shouldn't they be sent home for falsifying a claim of persecution? Let's go a bit farther. Let's talk about why Muslims are going to Europe and other Western countries. I was recently in Europe as part of a fact-finding expedition on the Islamization of Europe. I saw a small part of what was happening there. It made me glad to come home, because over there the government people don't give 2 cents for the people of their country. They could care less, because you know what? They think of themselves as nobles. They don't give a crap about the average person. And no place was that more apparent than in France. In France, the Interior Ministry insists they don't have a migrant problem. Yet they created a program to address radical Islam. I asked the head of the department for the definition of radical Muslim. He answered, a Muslim who commits violence. No problem, okay. So they needed a special program for Christians, right? No. They needed a special program for Jews, right? No. How about Buddhists? No. Today, thousands of Muslims are answering the call to immigrate to non-Muslim lands. According to the Department of Homeland Security, 70,000 refugees granted asylum in the USA in 2013. The leading countries and nationality for refugee admissions were Iraq, 28%, Burma, 23%, Bhutan, 13%, Somalia, 11%. 75% of refugee admissions in 2013 were from these 4 countries. We accept that the vast majority of those living in these countries are Muslim. Then, if we accept this, then 70% of 70,000 translates into 49,000 Muslims migrated to America in 2013. President Obama brought in 84,995 refugees in the fiscal year 2016, which 4 of the top 5 countries are Syria, Iraq, Burma, Somalia, all are predominantly Muslim. For the fiscal year 2017, President Obama boosted the refugee resettlement program for a 57% increase. Ann Corcoran of Refugee Resettlement Watch noted that 98% of the Syrian refugees in the first few months of the fiscal year were Muslim. This begs the question as to how they are qualifying as refugees, since the definition of refugee includes the requirement of being persecuted. Let's talk about why they're coming. In the Sunnah, the prophets said, I disown every Muslim who settles among the mushrikeen. Who's that? That's the non-Muslim. So why are they coming? It says, rather we should say that each Muslim has its own unique circumstances and his own ruling that applies to him, and each person is accountable for himself. If he is able to practice his religion in the Muslim country in which he lives more than he can in a Kafir country, which is the non-Muslim country, then it is not permissible for him to settle in the Kafir country. So why are they coming? That was a hadith. So let's talk about this. What does it say in the Quran about Muslims coming to a non-Muslim country? Don't trust your local Quran. And I'll tell you why. When they came here and they started to bring Qurans, they want to make sure us stupid English people got a corrupted message. They wanted to make sure we didn't know the truth. We have Usama Dakdok to thank. He's one of the fellow hosts on Global Patriot Radio. He produced something called the Generous Quran. Usama Dakdok is from Egypt. Arabic is his native tongue. Now, this man put his money where his mouth was. He sent every single person, the federal government, in our Congress, 1 copy. That's 535 copies, I believe, sent out. That doesn't include other people. He runs a program called Straightway Ministry. He truly is a genius. I listen to him a lot. Now, I'm only giving you a tidbit on this topic. So ask yourselves, how is it possible this guy before you can know this and your federal government acts as if it does not? Under President Obama, many great men were fired or forced into retirement for sharing such information. Amongst them now, Major Stephen Coughlin, just mentioned. Dr. William Bradford. Dr. William Bradford was fired for saying these two words together in an article published in the National Security Law Journal. These two words, Islamic terrorism. He's fired for saying those two words together. Anyone want to take a guess who said that? Could it be Obama? Yes. If we want to win the war on terrorism, we have to accept what the terrorists tell them about it themselves. Work from there. Major Coughlin provided a study that there are no outliers in what Islamic terrorists say versus what a, quote, average Muslim says. Nothing, nada, it doesn't exist. Let it sink in. I'm a research writer. I don't have access to anything classified. All my research is easily accessible information. So why are we not doing what we did to fight communism? We taught what communism's true goals were. We taught what it did with those ideas. To those who dared to be different, what did it do? It crushed anybody with a creative mindset. What do you think totalitarianism does? It's the same thing, and that is what the Islamic Caliphate is. That is what the Muslim Brotherhood wants. It is the exact same thing that the Islamic State has. Have we done any of this? Have we done any of this education to our kids today? Have we warned them? No. Instead, we say things like, Islam spreads through cultural diffusion. Is that entirely accurate? Historically, no. The funny thing about that is, the truth is much worse. In New York State, you're required to teach things like Islam spread through cultural diffusion. However, the graduate level in the State University of New York publishes, the Sunni press, publishes a series of books, the Al-Tabari history, to inform the graduate students in Sunni that Islam spread through conquest. So the truth can only be shown to people who are studying on a graduate level. We must lie to the high school students. I have a problem. What can we do to stop this? What can we do to begin? Find your local Act for America chapter. Fight with them. Promote people like Chris Chamberlain for governor, who's aware of what's happening. When you fight with when you work with the Act for America, you're fighting. Here's one of the first things we're all fighting for: a simple law to be put in your state, in every state. American laws for American courts. Have some guts. Stand up. Do what's right. There's so much to be scared of. I'm going to read you a small passage about this hijra one more time to let you know how scary this really is. This comes from the Hadith Muhammad, Hadith 1671. The Prophet said, Hijra, migration, will never cease as long as there is an enemy to be fought. Well, I cannot pronounce the Arabic transliterations, but the Prophet said Hijra is two types. One is forsaking bad deeds, and the other is migrating for the sake of Allah, which means migrating for the sake of jihad. His messenger, Hijra will never cease so long as repentance can be accepted. Repentance will never cease to be accepted until the sun rises from its place of setting. When it rises, thus a seal will be placed upon every heart with what is in it. They're talking about until all of the world becomes Muslim. They will move. They will go on. Now, I'm going to tell you one more thing, what'll blow your mind. In 1990, this book was published, Muslim Travelers. It warned us. The funny thing about it, the person who's telling the truth, the Muslim author of the section on the obligation of the jihad. We need to wake up. This is crazy. Allowing things to continue as they are is the definition of insanity. Get out there. Do what you can. Stand up for African America. And I'll say, stand up for Chris Chamberlain, because he's going to be one of those people who will put us in a safe place. Thank you.
Thank you.